Praise be to the revered Sunkai. Disco Mute here, talking about Lizardmen magic and where it's at the moment after the latest FAQ. The big change from that FAQ update is that Law Familiar can no longer be used to gain signature spells amongst of our race. I'm uncertain whether that's a good thing or a bad thing at this point. Our racial magic is pretty poor, so maybe it's a good thing overall for us. But the Slann really struggle with a lot of things that other wizards don't. Firstly, it flies, it often has ethereal, and it has a ward save. So a lot of boosts that spells, give their casters aren't that useful. The second thing is, the greater thing is, it's 90-degree vision arcs ever since it's been a monstrous creature, mean spells are harder to use, particularly hexes and enchantments. An enchantment spell, when you have to use this before you move, has to be of your unit, and so you have your turn, you make your move, maybe you've got something lined up, your opponent gets a turn. Are there panics? Are there fallbacks? Is there combat? Is there anything? Are you still able to cast that spell when you sort of wake up, so to speak, on your turn? Enchantments are virtually useless for us, and hexes aren't much better. Hexes are a little easier because usually the enemy is in front of you, as opposed to, your friendly units tend to be to the side of you. So here we go. First of all, I'll just talk about the tier system. So tier S is a constant benefit throughout the game, and it may well influence the game result. A tier, that spell will give you a constant benefit. B tier, you're likely to get use from it throughout the game, and probably more than once, but can't guarantee. A C tier, you might get some use out of the spell during the game, you might not. D tier, you really have to be lucky for it to do anything. And an F tier means your spell's never going to do anything. Monsoon, our Law of Lustrious spell, is C tier. It's surprisingly good. Don't forget, it blocks line of sight, and it stays in place when you roll a hit on the scatter dice. Even against non-missile armies, this can be used to really mess with people's ability to charge. So don't underplay it. It is decent. It's obviously better against shooting armies. And Apotheosis is just a terrible spell. I've even tried to make it work. I ran Ripidactyls and Horned Ones here, with characters that I'm trying to give terror to rather than heal. Maybe you can build it to a D. Let's just move on. Okay, Battle Magic has now, it's been hit fairly hard, I think, by the change, because Monsoon was a really great spell. Battle Mages love to sit back and shoot, and Monsoon fit in well with that. It's got two S tier spells, Pillar of Fire and Fireball. I'm not going to go over what each spell does. You likely already know. If you don't, you can look it up. Okay, Hammer Hands. Now, the signature spells that you now have to take if you have to take, are much more relevant for Law Familiars and are in bold, and the asterisks are in for assailment spells. Now, assailment matters. I'll tell you why. Assailment spells, in general, in the old world, are terrible. You don't want your wizards in combat. They're all either F tier or D tier, except we can make our frog, our Slann, ethereal. In tournaments, this is not like this video is not for tournaments, okay? Lizardmen aren't winning tournaments for a start, and secondly, you all know what you're doing. But for casual people who enjoy Lizardmen, you can get some value out of running an ethereal flog and charging him into combat when you need to. They can't hit, back. My Slann has taken out a unit of Pegasus Knights before with Hammer Hands. It can happen. So assailments are rated if you want to build a frog for combat using ethereal, and in that case, it is a B tier spell. Of C tier, we have Arcane Urgency. It's all right. D tier, Curse of Arrow Attraction. I might get some hate for putting that so low, but think about it. First, it's a hex spell, so you need to be able to actually cast the thing, which isn't guaranteed. Okay, the range is 21, which is nice. You cast it. You have to have some very likely skinks. The only really things that we use to shoot in our army. They have to want to and be able to shoot the same unit. Then you have to roll a couple of ones, which you might, in a unit of 10, maybe you roll 2. Then you have to hit with that one. Then you have to wound with what you've re-rolled. Then you have to, get them to fail their armor test. All for that. Then suddenly, fantastic, the Curse of Arrow Attraction has done something. So it's not that good. And Curse of Cowardly Flight is down there, obviously, as well. And in F tier, we have Oak and Shield, since we already have a 5+ ward save. Elementalism, no S tiers, in my opinion. Southern Elemental Spirit is a fantastic spell. Don't underrate blocking line of sight. It is really good. Wind Blast, again, is such a fun magic missile. The only reason that is not S tier is that it has a range of 15 inches, which is fairly short for those magic missiles. And Plague of Rust. Now, that's got a double asterisk there because it's hard for me to rate. You know what? I think it's B tier. Almost everyone else thinks it's an S tier spell. Just like I spoke about with the Curse of Arrow Attraction. First, you have to manage to cast it. Then, what you're casting, when it hits, it has to, get those 2 numbers on the dice that fail the armor save but would have passed, and then you've got some value off it. If you've managed to injure whatever it is you've cast on, you can cast stuff that's engaged in combat, so it is fairly decent. But I've had games where that hasn't done anything, which is why I think it's B tier. I don't think you can guarantee, results throughout the game, but most people just love it. They think it's the best spell in Elementalism, and I think Elementalism is the best spell, the best set in the game. So I'll put it in A, but you've been warned. You're still all right though, of course. Tropical Mistle Pathway now. It's 9 inches. I mean, you look at it and it looks fantastic. I know someone who swears by it, but the range is 9 inches, and yeah, you can place it wherever you want, but then it can't move again. It's not going to help you charge. And then if you're putting stuff in flanks and all that sort of thing, well, your opponent's turn's next. It's all right. Okay, D tier, Urban Ramparts suffers from what all our enchantment spells suffer from. And Stormclaw, which is terrible, and Flaming Sword, which is even worse, the Assailment spell. High Magic. Now, I should say that I think that Elementalism didn't suffer too much from that nerf because it has so many decent spells for Lore Familiar to pick, things that are as good as the Monsoon. So in High Magic, High Magic's tough. It also has quite a lot of half-decent spells to rate how the changes affected it. But geez, Monsoon suited it well. It worked really well with Tempest. It worked really well with Walk Between Worlds. So I think it has mattered to High Magic. So S tier Tempest, such a great control spell, a really underrated control spell. It's a really fun to control movement in the way that Tempest controls movement. It is 12 inches, but I still think it's a good spell. A tier. So I really love Walk Between Worlds. I think it's one of the most underrated spells in the game. Yes, we can be ethereal anyway, in which case it's not that good, but you put it with Becalming Cogitation. You can be ethereal for most of the game. You can move in to get those magic missiles off, and then you can move out of dispel range. Especially with Becalming Cogitation, you move between 27 inches and 24, and now you're in like this perfect dispel range. It is a really good spell, in my opinion, and give it a try. In B tier, we have Fiery Convocation. It looks amazing, but it's a template spell. It does much better against infantry, and infantry is terrible in the old world. So I think it can only be B, but you won't be sorry, I don't think, in a casual game when you take it. In C tier, we have Fury of Cain. Yes, it can be targeted in combat, but it's a 12-inch range. It suffers from what our enchantments suffer from. Corporeal Unmaking, not bad as far as assailments go. And in D tier, Drain Magic. Oh, that's a terribly designed spell, isn't it? They roll a 6 or more, and their level 4 wizard have dispelled it. It can be okay at lower point costs if you think maybe they're not going to run at level 4, but yeah. And Shield of Safari. So Illusion I've never liked, and for one simple reason: every spell needs another 3 inches of range at least for it to be useful. In A tier, you have Column of Crystal. Could be one of the best in the template vortexes in the game, but its range is 9 inches, too short. So the Assailment spell I'm putting in B, a lot of people think it should be S, as far as assailement goes. You give it an ogre blade, and boy, your Slann can tear through things. The thing is, then you're paying 65 points, and your Slann is only going to be strength 5. It just takes too much to make work, in my opinion, to be that good. But still, it's a B. If you're going the assailement route, it's as good as hammer hands, as good as anything, in my opinion. In C tier, you've got confounding convocation to give them stupidity. CT is probably generous, given the range is 9 inches. Um, Okay, Mind Razor and Miasmic Mirage. This demonstrates maybe why my tier system's a little off. Think about it. I mean, Mind Razor will give you value the whole game, even if, probably every time it's just going to be D3 strength 3 hits. And then maybe once per the game, you might get a D3 plus 3 strength 4 hits. So you'll get value off it nearly every game. Miasmic Mirage with 15 inches with a hex spell, it makes it hard for us. You put the slam close to whatever you're trying to cast it on, if it fails, the Slann's going to die. You probably won't get value for it through the game, but if you do, it can be game breaking. And yet they're kind of like the opposite end of the spectrums there in sitting and C together. Mind Razor and Miasma Mirage. Look, Shimmering Dragon, can help your characters, not so bad. And Glittering Robe is in D. Okay, so I have played with Necromantic more than any other lore because I think it's fun. Would take it with a lore familiar. I would attack leadership. I was charging dinosaurs in. Apotheosis trying to give things terror, make everything flee. Seems like fun, but the fact is, if you charge a big dinosaur at anything that's vulnerable to terror, you probably want it to pass its break test. You probably want to connect with that dinosaur. That's just the truth of the matter. And boy, oh boy, has this made a massive difference, this lore familiar rule, because the worst spells in Necromantic are terrible. In A tier, we have Spiritual Vortex, a 5-inch blast template that's going to affect leadership for 8 inches around it, nearly the whole battlefield. Great fun. And it's dangerous terrain. Sensational. Unquiet Spirits is a really underrated magic missile. It'll do damage on a lot of things, especially cavalry. C tier, there's nothing in B there or S. Okay, Spirit Leash, again, you can attack that that leadership. 18 inches of hex, and you can cast it into combat, so that's why it's C. But it's a bit of a win more spell. It's only really going to matter in combat if you're probably winning that combat anyway, which can help. As much breaking is much better than falling back in good order in this game. So yeah, it's all right. In D tier, you've got Curse of the Years. It's 15 inches. Can't cast it on things that are in combat, so you're gonna have to be pretty lucky to get value out of that. And when you do, it'll be a big deal. -1 weapon skill and toughness. In F tier, what were they thinking in this spell? You could make this a strength 10 instead of strength 3, and it would still be unplayable. Anyway, definitely Cabal. I probably would be unplayable. It'd probably be D tier. And definitely Cabal, of course. So you can see how difficult it is, even with a lore familiar here, of what you can take now. I mean, Spiritual Vortex, yeah, you got D tier spells running in there. And Spectral Steed. Since friendly characters whose true stripe of infantry are now very few. Once upon a time, you cast it on yourself and you'd be ethereal and fly, and if you didn't have ethereal, you'd be getting value. Not anymore. Okay, so the question is, what is the best lore for the Lizardmen, and are you taking a lore familiar or not? I've copped out a little bit with the lore familiar. Probably in this order, Battle High and Elementalism, but I think you'll be fairly happy with any of them. Battle's got obviously a couple of much better spells, but then some that are worse, whereas High and Elementalism are a bit more evenly spread. There's really daylight between those three and Illusion and Necromantic. Without the lore familiar, I think that Elementalism is the best to roll for its lack of poor spells and the fact that there are 3 A tier ones you can grab. High is certainly second, in my opinion. And there's really, if you're rolling, I think they're the only two you can really roll. Battle's going to be next, but I mean, if you if you're not getting those S tier spells, particularly if you miss out on both of them, it's terrible. The odds are you probably will miss out on one, and you're going to struggle. And then probably illusion, and yeah, you don't want to be rolling in necromantic. So that's it. Praise be to the revered Sunkai, and I'll see you next time.